Hello, everyone. I'm Umair. I am hosting this podcast on behalf of BetterTech, and I have two very cool gentlemen with me who are actually some big shots in the AI world. Let's see what they tell us today about AI and IoT. The topic of discussion today is around AI and IoT and the convergence of the two fields. So I have with me Doug Thompson and Dr. Shahzad. I'll let these gentlemen introduce themselves and we take our discussion from there. So, how about you, Doug? You go first.
Sure, thanks. I'm Doug Thompson, is Umair mentioned. I work for Microsoft. I'm a my permanent role is, or not permanent role, but my main role is a technology strategist. So I work with CIO, CTOs, business leaders, and stuff. And okay, what's the strategy of how you can use technology to solve your business problems? So I sort of live in this weird world where I speak technology on one hand, I speak business on the other, and I have to sort of translate the two between them. So mainly I use my storytelling skills to sort of get these messages across. But as you may have mentioned, I'm an AI ambassador, which sort of I go around and talk to people about our Microsoft strategy about artificial intelligence, sort of what we envision that to be and how it can be utilized in business.
So, Doug, you went first and introduce yourself. How about you, Dr. Shahzad?
So I'm Shahzad Cheema, and by the way, thank you, Mer, for inviting me, and nice to meet you, Doug. I am based in Munich. Currently, I am working as a lead data scientist at IBM. In Munich, there is a global headquarters for IoT. So what's an IoT? I have been involved in the field of AI in different roles in academia, in research, then in startups, then in enterprise, and then landed into IBM a few years ago. So somehow I'm involved in AI since 2003 when I started teaching. And it's great to be here. So these days I'm typically working as a technical lead on several projects. And then my role also then becomes talking to, on one hand, our technical team, and then on the other hand, also talk to the clients and executives to translate the business requirements to the technical side, and also explain what are, let's say, the limitations on the technical side.
You mean you can't do everything? I mean, that's what they always ask me. It's they watch too many movies, it does everything.
I guess as I said earlier, for all practical purposes, you guys can treat me as a fly on the wall and talk among yourself. Here's an IoT guy. Here's an AI ambassador. So what am I doing over here? But let's make myself useful a bit. So guys, why don't you tell us that what is all about artificial intelligence and IoT these days? What is that? What are the two fields? How they converge?
I'll defer to the most educated person on the call here, because he's teaching it every day.
Okay, thanks. But I think I'll take it. I think it's let's take AI first. Mm-hmm. So AI is this overarching concept of intelligent automation, started from simulation of human brain, and soon later, let's say, realize that it's not that easy to just and it's not sometimes even worthful to do that. So eventually, over history, AI has emerged into, let's say, the machine learning, data mining, then deep learning. So technically, I would call it AI is then the science that is more about dealing with this intelligent automation machinery. Of course, having some concepts for robotics and so on. On the other hand, then IoT was more or less there. There were devices all the time and they were communicating. However, the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, what we have seen common in two fields is that the computation power, the clouds that are available, the GPUs that are there, the new protocols of communicating on the IoT side. And that brings then us, the two fields together. On one side, we have the hardware side, the devices side, the communication, the protocol of communication, the amount of data those devices are transferring. And on the other side, we have the dream of making a one universal world where things talk to each other intelligently, autonomously. Now, even the complex algorithm where AI started, for example, for those neural networks and stopped, now they are even possible to, let's say, kind of reconsider and re-implement. So this is what I would consider like that. It's not really as one field, but on the other hand, both of them are really taking the advantage of technology development last one decade. What would you say, Doug?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And AI is such an expansive term and field. It goes from, like I said, the IoT. IoT needs AI to be really useful, simply because the amount of data that you have to go through, because it would take a human many lifetimes. There's not enough humans on the planet, I think, to digest all the signals coming from IoT today. You just can't physically do it. It's too time consuming. So machine learning, as he mentioned, is a great thing to do, where you can train these things to consume vast amount of data and come up with something coherent, that humans can then understand, or make some significant data out of. But again, the IoT has been out there for years. Sensors in a refinery, the automatic light switch that comes on, these are all things that are connected. I even had a coworker to put his hot tub on the internet, just simply because he could. Thought it was a cool thing to do. But your thermostats, everything is getting connected today, which gives us a lot of opportunity to get insight and be a little more intelligent in how we do things that we didn't have before, because you just couldn't do it. You manage things with a spreadsheet or something like that. It's just not really feasible.
So what we are here, what I am hearing in journal, that with the everyday use of now these sensor-based devices that now also have an added ability to transmit data, and because these are sensors which are picking data every second, and that there is tons of data out there, and now we are getting all this data, so it's not humanly possible to probably process it, and that's where AI comes in. So
Correct.
the mixture of this sensor-based networks and ability of new AI algorithms is actually giving rise to this interesting AI and IoT kind of convergence phenomena. So is this a correct understanding of?
Yeah, that's a great correction. That's a great connection of those things. And also the public cloud, the availability of this cloud scale, hyperscale infrastructure now that can take that in and do something with it. Because before, you had to buy storage, and storage is still expensive. And these things, to store all this data that you could really not use much of. So it didn't really make a lot of, you took the little bits that you needed, maybe a light switch is on or off, and you left all this other stuff out that was relevant. I'll use an example of like a smart building. You set the AC in a room, and but you can't tell necessarily if it's occupied all the time, or based on a schedule, or what's the rooms next to it's going to be. So there's all this other data that wasn't really important. You simply chose, is it occupied or is it not? Right. And that gave you a little bit of ability to control things a little bit better, but it didn't give you everything that you needed to be really smart about it.
So kind of you touched upon the next part that I wanted to ask, that why AI and IoT, and why AI and IoT now? So you mentioned that because some of the new advances in tech and all that, we are now able to process a lot of data, as well as our processing power, our ability to capture that data has increased, and that has given rise to that. So, I mean, if you two gentlemen can kind of think of what is the kind of key thing, or maybe one tech, or maybe a series of tech or key events that has taken place that has made these fields explode, or at least led us to believe that these are exploding fields. Because AI here, it was here for like since past 50, 60 years. IoT is a fancy name of now devices talking. I mean, we had been talking to devices for such a long time. So what do you think such a key turn of events that has taken place that everyone is talking about it now?
So I think Doug already mentioned one part, and that is, of course, the cloud as a service, which made life a lot easy, storing of the data, managed services, so that the businesses, they can just take advantage of what is available there. They don't have to build everything from scratch, and it's getting cheaper over time. But before that, I think where it came from, I think one big part is this digitization, internet, that the business and the consumer and the platform, a lot of data started being collected. I mean, in industries and in classical businesses, it's still like, we are in the middle there. It's kind of middle ages. It's still not at that stage where we have in the consumer market, that the data is very well digitized. So I think one part of that is internet and digitization. Then the second part is, of course, the cloud as a service. And then the third part from technology side is on top of Moore's law and classical CPUs, the GPUs, and because that then allowed us to process a lot of unstructured data. And that unstructured data kind of created this wow moment from computer vision, from voice, from text, NLP. So I see them, at least these are, I would say these three are the major part. Because other problems, like I think if you, maybe we go later on about robotics, they still have those challenges, which were there 20 years ago or 50 years ago. But these three actually led to a lot of development in this area.
And no, I would agree. And sort of economy of scale that you get to do things. So now it's more affordable to do things. Sensors and stuff are really cheap just because of mass manufacturing. And like I said, but then also I'd say you sort of hit upon it earlier, is that now I can go to some place that's got a model, a data model already written that accomplishes what I want to do. So I don't necessarily have to have a data scientist on staff per se to go do something. Now we're allowing, what's really great about this is now we're actually allowing business decision makers to go out and do their own research, because it's still difficult, it's still complex. But in the way that you package services like computer vision, if I, that, which is such a great utility, we have a computer vision service too in Azure that we do when we train, and you can do things like search through unstructured data, you can do written text, you can do typed text, you can do voice to text, and there's all this data and rich stuff that you can get down into something that I don't necessarily have to create. I don't have to have my IT department to go do that. And I can simply go out, if I got a credit card, I can go to any of the cloud vendors and subscribe and go do this on myself. I see it in research all the time.
So I guess you gentlemen have touched upon two things. One is that why someone can, why it's now more possible for journal computer scientists or people to go and do AI, which was not possible in the past. But I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have also touched upon that with the possibility of this edge computing and with this 4G, 5G networks coming in, where you can, transmit a lot of data through wireless mechanisms, and then your ability to process that data in the cloud. Do you guys feel that these are the three key ingredients that is actually helping AI and IoT to explode?
Access to getting more data is always good. We can now, with this, we can go to places where we previously couldn't collect data, very remote places, if you will. And I'll look at sort of how 5G, 4G's transform the way things are done in Africa or emerging markets and stuff, where they don't have, which was sort of an interesting thing that I run into, is if you go to a country that hasn't been doing technology for decades and decades, they can actually do things faster than the more developed, because they don't have this reliance and long tail on the existing infrastructure. So they can start from scratch and adopt things, and there's also regulations and stuff which also come into play. But it does sort of democratize getting data a lot more. But it also, I think, is going to introduce a lot of, and we can talk about this in a minute because it's important, is how do you secure all these endpoints? The data in the cloud's fairly secure. That's easy to do, easy in an IT way. But securing the endpoints, and a lot of these sensors are out here, weren't developed from a security standpoint.
Is it really? I'll just let you guys talk about it. But is this easy to secure, or is it just a feeling? Because we are giving our data to the clouds, and these clouds, we understand that. So let me pick a company which is not here, which is Google. So they have all the data that we have, or the Facebook, they have all the data there. It's in the cloud, but they know everything about us. So the more data is getting in the cloud, don't you think we may feel that it's secure, but it also has a lot of privacy and other concerns that is coming into play as well with all that?
Yeah, the privacy is and especially for us, is a huge concern for us, in that we go to great lengths to protect our customers' data, and and what we collect. Again, the consumer facing companies collect a lot of stuff. Apple knows more about me than I would necessarily care to do, but it's always a trade-off between, okay, do I want to use this, something usable, make my life better, and trade some stuff off? So I like to perceive that I'm protecting myself with long passwords, and no, I don't necessarily do things and don't do the cookie type thing, but I know if there's enough of my data out there in bits and pieces that some At some point in time, somebody like Shahzad there's going to come up with an algorithm which can assemble all that stuff and come up with a virtual me, which is a concern. But you look at the youth today, they don't even think anything about it. You click through these agreements and they share so much stuff. I mean, the whole TikTok stuff that's going on right now is sort of a proof of that. Who's got control of the data? That the privacy and security of that, it's a concern. Once it's in the cloud, it's fairly easy to concern if you do best practices to protect. But in transit and at the point it's being transmitted, those are big risk factors. And then you can contaminate the data upstream.
And exactly, and I will add, I think it's a very good point that first thing is like, is it a consumer company? Are we going to use your data or not? And I think Microsoft is also not in that domain mostly, and similar, IBM anyhow not. So once we talk with the client that you already know, okay, we are not going to do anything with this data anyhow. That's one thing. Second is how you provide your service of cloud, because IBM is also, providing a lot about, let's say, private cloud, hybrid cloud, and public cloud. So you can have, of course, whole private cloud or on-prem for yourself if your organization wish to do that. So that's also one way to, let's say, secure your, your concerns about data from a cloud provider. Nevertheless, the cybersecurity connectivity, especially in IoT, is still a topic. And there are definitely use cases where I would say it's always it's always a new, because in AI, I would disagree with Doug that there is still it's a lot of problems. Like we have many services, but even in vision, I mean, okay, face detection, we are done nearly. We can detect the face on cameras, on cloud, any machine. OCR, maybe we are not done, but once we are trying to solve a problem, there is still part of those problems that need a customization. So we are we are not done with AI automation, but on cloud, there are parts which we can use, and that's what kind of consumer companies do. Like they try to solve more generic problems, like people detection, fashion recognition. They're more generic problems than industrial problems. And then that's why when industries, very core industries, they go to cloud, it's typically a new, and it's not always reuseful for any other purpose anyhow.
So
we don't disagree that much about that thing, because there's still, I'm talking about if I'm going down to get the ice cream pop down at the store, which comes in a bag, that's fine. I got that. If I want to create a craft ice cream, then we need people like you that can sort of do that, because it always gets down to if I'm doing a commodity data type thing, then that stuff may be there. But if I'm really trying to improve a business or get extra insights, then you definitely need somebody there that knows what they're doing to match that to what the outcome is supposed to be.
So you guys have already answered my next question, but let me still for the sake of question, putting it over here. So I mean, I just wanted to figure out what are the trend of AI and related job creation and everything is going, because as I see, as you gentlemen are talking about cloud, I mean, the way Azure, Amazon, Google, they are coming up with services, it's becoming to a layman or probably an everyday computer guy, it seems like that very soon it's going to be AI as a service. So we probably do not need very highly qualified PhD, although in a small amount, to create new algorithms and all that. But is this, I mean, the bigger companies are, I'm sure they're trying to take us to that stage where they want to make us depend on them for everything in the service model. But will we ever get there where we are in that journey? And you kind of answer that we still need people like Dr. Shahzad, but where we are with that journey and where AI, its knowledge and everything is democratized. And is it a good thing that everything is getting in the cloud and it's being offered as a service, which means only a few have a knowledge to that knowledge base and everything, how things work, and the rest are just dependent on that? I mean, in terms of a field, how you feel about that?
I think I love this topic, by the way, because when I was programming in 2003, I was building neural network myself in C++, in MATLAB, layers, how they are defined. And it was, I mean, there was no Python scikit, no library. When I was programming back in 2010, then of course there was Python and life was easy, but still you had to do a lot of work, algorithms. When I'm programming in, let's say, 2018, oh, there is pipeline and I put things together. Life is much easy. But on the other hand, there is always like new challenges, and there are a lot of new challenges. I can say. So it's just like that. We are phasing out, and things become more democratized. But then there are next values that you can, for example, computer vision, quantum, and these type of topics. They are not done deal yet, even though you can make a lot of use of them. So I see that, yes, it's kind of getting democratized. Over the time, there is still auto ML type of thing. So the program that I used to write down, let's say in 1 month, I can now use best practice and do it in 1 day or even 1 hour. But on the other hand, then the industry is also so much, and sometimes the problems have other issues that were not there in that time or not envisioned at that time, which are now present here. So I would say it's like that there is a lot that is being automated. This is the natural way anyhow. But the part where we have the problem requirement and translate them to a certain a machine learning framework or automation framework, that is still open, and someone has to do, typically a human. Just to give you an example, I made one case where we automated the kind of one of the largest routing network for shipments in the world, right, for our logistic industry. And we did not, I can't say how much of machine learning we use, but it was really a small part. A huge part of that is modeling, and that modeling is more operation research type of related. So there is a whole part of transforming the problems to a framework where then we automate them. And then the next challenge is at the end of side, the end-to-end deployment. It's like, and then how to keep those features alive, how to make AI applications in such a way that it's not dead, they are learning, they are improving over time. So these two areas are still, I would say, much open in more or less in any application.
No, I would agree. And it's, we're not working, if you're a data scientist today, you don't have to be worried about working out of a job because somebody's automated some things on the back end. There's, like, it's about constantly learning and evolving. When you sort of hit the edge of what can be done from a commodity standpoint, that's where very smart people come in and solve these problems. From the democratization standpoint, it does give these smaller companies and startups, it removes one of the barriers to entry that used to be there, simply the ability to have all this infrastructure in place, the capital expense and everything that went with that, and necessarily hundreds of Dr. Shahzad's working for them and all that cost that comes along with it. Where if they have a business idea to do something, they can then go and with less resources, go develop a strategy and a business product that they can go forward to do. Now, as they grow and stuff, then again, you're cutting the edge. It's a competitive advantage. What can I use to go do and beat my competitors at these things? So it's sort of a, there's a balance. And as I mentor some master's students at the University of Texas here, and they're very extremely, the first time they had me go talk to them, I'm looking at the resumes and I'm having to look up every third word, because they're just extremely bright at what they do. But it still comes back down to, as we said, humans talking to other humans about what we do best. We get creative about it. and you can get, AI can only get so creative at this point. We're still a long ways away from the singularity. If you go back in time to that, we're still a long ways away from that, but we're infinitely closer than we were a decade ago to do. But as we know more, there's more to learn.
Yeah. I mean, we, at this point in time, we all have only our opinions about it. Let's see. There's a Terminator camp, and then there is other campuses that we are far away. Okay, so
by the way, Umer, I have an opinion. It's not, there's no worries. Robots are not coming right away next door. So I think it will take quite some time.
But you see, my point of view on all that is that if you can think about something, that can happen. And I mean, flying in the air was a fantasy 200, 300 years ago. So running in a car, maybe it's a fantasy. I mean, who knows? 60 years back, we couldn't actually imagine that the cars can drive on their own. And these fantasies are becoming more and more reality. So I guess we should be prepared. If we can think of something, we can eventually get that. So one question is that in terms of now organizations preparedness, and I stumbled upon some IBM's paper where they said that there was an era of digital transformation, and now from a digital organization we are moving more towards the cognitive organization or cognitive transformation. So is it just a marketing thing? I feel that the companies are still stuck in the digital transformation era, and they are not even being able to do that. So what do you guys have an opinion on that? That are how this ice age of transformation, digital transformation is going to end, and we'll move to the next. When it's going to happen?
Since you mentioned IBM, so I take the chance first to do, in our defense. I think it's like, yes, the different industries are at different stage of digitization. Think about insurance industry; they are way have banking sector, but then there are manufacturing industry. They are somewhere in the middle, and then there are different countries, different subsectors. So a lot has been done on digitization, but what is not done is like, okay, how to then take an advantage of that. And that is where these cognitive transformations come. That I mean, think about like COVID situation, right? We cannot move as human, and we just have to stay home. But we still need PPEs. We still need many equipment. We still need supplies. We have the whole requirements of manufacturing, which means there is a genuine need to automate many of the tasks and in manufacturing. Just as an example. That is not yet there. I mean, a lot of that is yet to be automated with this cognitive transformation. So I would say a huge open area for organizations at the moment. So that's how I see that. Maybe we are kind of in the middle, or some organization at the end. Only few are in the very beginning, at least in Europe or US, I would assume, or West side. But cognitive transformation, based on my daily experience, it's like the whole management has to go through this. They have to understand how AI works. I mean, when we start projects, and typically you are used to say, okay, guys, here are functional requirements. How much time? 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, and then it's an AI application, and you say, okay, we will first do a feasibility, then we will do a proof of concept, and then we will do a minimum viable product, and then we are not even sure. And that's a whole transformation of mind.
I can vouch for that. We are not even sure stuff that, because we have an AI team, and when we talk to our customer, that we are not sure that even we will be ever going to give you a solution or not. Everything becomes it becomes a different ball game. So yeah, I can understand that. But are the frameworks emerging, like we know how the software development lifecycle works? I mean, we knew it for ages. Now we kept on improving it. The iterative model comes, the agile model comes, and whatnot. We know what our functional requirements are. So as the frameworks are emerging, how to take up for an organization to become a cognitive organization, how the projects, AI projects should be, AI, IoT, let's say, projects should be dealt with. And are do the companies have a focus on that or not? Or they're just right now in the phase where they are just creating technology and this will come later?
Yeah, I actually have a whole thing that I do on transformation. Digital transformation, the technology is the smallest part of it. It's the end result. It's the organizational change and the mindset that has to change to really do this, because you're fundamentally disrupting who has control of the data, who can see the data, and what they can do with the data. And if you're not sort of giving that access to people all along the business line and being very transparent about how it's being used, what we're doing with it, and where we're going, all you're simply doing is making maybe a little bit of improvement in the routing structure, or you start making these incremental changes at a certain point. Automating manufacturing, like that does a really good job up to a certain point, and then the growth or the speed and improvement drops off a lot. If you don't change the whole organization, the way they think about it, the way they do things, who has access to it, what they can, who can do things, that's the real change that's got to take place. And I think that goes with the cognitive piece of it as well. It ties into the human piece of that and how we rethink how we've done business all this year.
Right. So gents, because this is a kind of podcast around AI and IoT, one last question. Where do you see the field is going in the next 5 years, 10 years, maybe? I'll let both of you take a stab on it, one after another.
I see it continued on exponential growth, again, because as you get more sensors and people start adopting more of this, there's going to be more and more data out there. You've got the compute power still going up. we haven't hit the boundaries of what's available from the we're
Is,
not we
is
don't
there
need quantum yet, but eventually we'll reach that point where we just can't compute enough, where we need the compute to do it.
is
The
there a
quantum to
magic
do it.
application that we are pursuing, or magic output, or maybe a milestone that we are pursuing that will help us understand where we are today, where we need to get?
It's the growth is as I've mentioned before we started. There was an article that came out June of last year that there's 41.6 billion IoT devices, and they'll be generating 79 zettabytes of data by 2025. I think that's on the low side, to be honest with you. But I can't even fathom that number. It's so big. That's a lot of zeros, as you were mentioning earlier.
So digitizing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think exactly. So it's like if we have autonomous cars. So I think that would be one of the test case for us. Okay, when are we going to see those cars running and then being reutilized within a decade? So that's a good, I would say, a decent estimate. And I agree with Doug that it will just continue the way it was last 1 decade. I mean, couple of decades we have seen an exponential growth in AI, and that I hope it will continue. And if that continues, then I would say very hopeful that we see, let's say, that benchmark that, okay, cars are, running autonomously on the roads, at least where they are needed. We don't have to run it everywhere. That's also another topic. So that's what I see. And also from IoT point of view, I think it's also, let's say, because we also mentioned somewhere 5G network. Of course, there will be some decisions that have to be taken, when and where this investment would make sense, who is going to do this type of investments in the innovation once we are reaching to our boundaries of current infrastructure. So that will be kind of precondition to go to, let's say, next stage of achievements.
So all I can get is that seems like there could be exciting times ahead where more and more automation is coming in and more science fiction stuff is going to happen. So let's keep our finger crossed. My team always tells me to try to close stuff in 30 minutes. That's the longest attention span that you can. But I let you two guys talk to each other if there's any question or any comment that you want to put in over here. I'm kind of done with my questions.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to come in, and nice to meet you, Shahzad. You're doing some great work over there. I pay attention to what IBM's doing. There's a lot of co-opetition that goes on between our companies to do that. So it's always fun. But it's exciting. May you live in exciting times, I think is the old quote, or interesting times. And I definitely say we do that. To make that next, where you talk about the autonomous cars, the big thing holding it back now, other than the rural areas and the infrastructure stuff, is that I don't want to let go of the steering wheel. That is my car. So it is a human problem.
That's the inertia.
That is blocking a lot
of this stuff.
Inertia.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. I think the human element is still, maybe we can talk a bit about it. And it's also about skills, because I think as we see the industry that is running the business now, much of that industry is used to, let's say, the old methods. They started their career before the computer was there, and then there are computers, then there are computers, then there is internet, then there is, digitization. So it's a huge, things are changing so fast that the management and the C-levels have to, I think, do a lot to cope with that, and also, I think, take some risks. And maybe Doug could say more about it.
I guess this is no different from when we changed from manual gears to automatic gears, and people took their time. But what I've seen, and that one of your comments actually flashed that idea, flashed that thought in my mind, that a change will take its time, but we never knew that a pandemic like COVID will accelerate digital adoption so fast. So I mean, this is a different world where.
You're exactly right. So I work in the education space a lot, and I fought for years. You need to enable remote learning. You need to. Oh no, we don't. We got time. We got these other things. What amazed me was once they had to do it. Once they were forced to, they couldn't go because we've always done it that way, or there's this or that, the excuses that come up. They put in the work to turn things around in a matter of weeks that, they've been putting off for years. So the capability is there once the human mind is sort of willing to let go of what they're, get out of their comfort zone and know they need to do something. That was phenomenal.
Yeah, it's the control, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Shahzad, you want to say any last comments before we?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And that has been a really great discussion. Really enjoyed, and yeah, meeting to you also, Doug. Yeah, so I would say I just add last comment, and because Umair knows that when I was also teaching, and we had exactly this kind of issues. I mean, typically we love to go on site, and I love to teach, and we also have initiative about data science teaching. But COVID type of situation have kind of asked us to rethink, and for good actually in some cases.
And
Yeah,
I
so
guess you taught at our kind of company as well. You teach a lot of our engineers about the computer vision and all that stuff. I guess that was wonderful experience. We would love to repeat that, but we can do it remotely, I guess, now as well. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for being with
Thank
me,
you.
and I enjoyed the conversation. I'll probably get a hold of you two guys again, and maybe we can do a small series on this AI stuff for everyone. So
Sure.
I enjoyed talking to you, and thank you very much again for being on the call, and see you
Bet.
guys soon again. Bye bye.
Thanks.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.